Hello, it's been a while and I felt for some reading this evening, so we will get back into the Celtic tales. I've actually started a new channel. It's a writing and reading channel, so if there's any book lovers out there who are interested in AuthorTube and want to follow my journey writing my book, so you can go and follow me there. I'm currently writing on a sci-fi comedy. I'm a bit sick now, so if my voice sounds raspy, it's because of that. But I got my tea. Alright, let's get into the story. Today we will be reading The Giant's Stairs. Let's light the candle first. There we go. Alright. On the road between Passage and Cork, there is an old mansion called Ronayne's Court. It was there that Maurice Ronayne and his wife, Margaret Gold, kept house, and their arms were still carved on the old chimney-piece. They were a mighty worthy couple, but had only one son, who was called Philip. Immediately upon first smelling the cold air of this world, the child sneezed, which was naturally taken to be a good sign of his having a clear head. The subsequent rapidity of his learning was truly amazing, for on the very first day a primer was put into his hands. He tore out the ABC page and destroyed it. As a thing quite beneath his notice, no wonder then that both father and mother were proud of their heir, who gave such indisputable proofs of genius. One morning, when he was just 7 years old, however, Master Phil went missing, and no one could tell. A large reward was offered, but it produced them no intelligence, and years rolled away without Mr. and Mrs. Ronayne having obtained any satisfactory account of the fate of their lost child. Nearby the mansion lived one Robin Kelly, a blacksmith who served the Ronayne family and who had been a great friend to young Master Phil. He was a handyman, and his abilities were held in a much estimation by the lads and the lasses of the neighborhood, including the young boy, for besides making plough irons and shoeing horses, which he did to great perfection, he interpreted dreams for the young folk, sang Arthur O'Bradley at weddings, and was so good-natured a fellow that he was known by half the county. Now it happened that Robin had a dream himself, and young Philip appeared to him in it. Robin thought he saw the boy mounted upon a beautiful white horse, telling him now he was made a page to the giant MacMahon, who had carried him off and who held his court in the hard heart of the rock. "The 7 years, my time of service are clean out, Robin," said the boy, "and if you release me this night, I will be the making of you for ever after." "And how will I know," said Robin, cunning enough, even in his sleep, "that this is not simply a dream?" "Take this," said the boy, "for a token." And at that word the white horse struck out with one of his hind legs, and gave poor Robin such a kick in the forehead that, thinking he was a dead man, he roared as loud as he could after his brains, and woke up, calling 1,000 murders. He found himself in bed, but he had the mark of the blow, the regular print of a horseshoe upon his forehead, as red as blood. Robin Kelly, who never before found himself puzzled at the dream of any other person, did not know what to think of his own. Robin was well acquainted with the giant stairs. They consist of great masses of rock, which, piled one above another, rise like a flight of steps from very deep water and up the bold cliff of Carrigmahon. Nor are they badly suited for stairs to those who have legs of sufficient length to stride over a moderate-sized house, or to clear the space of a mile in a hoop. A step and a jump, both these feats the giant Mahon was said to have performed in the days of old, and the common tradition of the country said that he dwelt still within the cliff, up whose side the stairs led. Such was the impression that the dream made on Robin, that he determined to put truth to the test. It occurred to him, however, before setting out on this adventure, that a plough iron would be no bad companion. He knew from experience that it was an excellent knock-down argument, having on many occasions settled a little disagreement very quietly. So, putting one on his shoulders, off he marched in the cool of the night. He walked all the way to the harbour. There he knocked on the door of an old friend of his, Tom, who, on hearing Robin's dream, promised him the use of his skiff, and moreover offered to assist in rowing it to the foot of the giant's stairs. So together they embarked. It was a beautiful, still night, and the little boat glided swiftly along. Only the regular dip of the oars, the distant song of a sailor, and sometimes the voice of a belated traveller at the ferry of Carrigallow, broke the quietness of the land and sea and sky. The tide was in their favour, and in a few minutes Robin and his friends rested on their oars under the dark shadow of the giant stairs. Robin looked anxiously for the entrance to the giant's palace, which, it was said, might be found by anyone seeking it at midnight. But no such entrance could he see. His impatience had hurried him there before midnight, and after waiting a considerable while in a state of suspense not to be described, Robin, with pure vexation, could not help exclaiming to his companion, "'Tis a pair of fools we are, Tom, for coming here at all on the strength of the dream." "And whose doing is it," said Tom, "but your own?" At the moment he spoke, they perceived a faint glimmering of light proceeding from the cliff, which gradually increased until a porch big enough for a king's palace unfolded itself almost on a level with the water. They pulled the skiff directly towards the opening, and Robin Kelly, seizing his pluck iron, boldly entered with a strong hand and a stout heart. Wild and rage was that entrance. The whole of which appeared formed of grim and grotesque faces blending so strangely with each other that it was impossible to define any one. The chin of one formed the nose of another. What appeared to be a fixed and stern eye it dwelled upon, changed into a gaping mouth, and the lines of the lofty forehead grew into a majestic and flowing beard. The more Robin allowed himself to contemplate the forms around him, the more terrific they became, and the stony expression of his crowd of faces assumed a savage ferocity as his imagination converted feature after feature into a different shape and character. At last he tore his eyes off them and advanced through a dark and devious passage, while a deep and rumbling noise sounded, as if the rock was about to close upon him and swallow him up alive forever. Now indeed poor Robin felt afraid. "Robin, Robin," he said to himself, "if you were a fool for coming here, what in the name of fortune are you now?" But as before, he had scarcely spoken when he saw a small light twinkling through the darkness in the distance, like a star in the midnight sky. The retreat was out of the question, for there were so many turnings and windings in the passage that he considered he had but little chance of making his way back. Therefore he proceeded towards the bit of light, and came at last into a spacious chamber, from the roof of which hung in the solitary lamp that had guided him. That single lamp afforded Robin abundant light, enough to see several gigantic figures seated around a massive stone table, as if in serious deliberation, although no word disturbed the breathless silence which prevailed. At the head of this table sat Mahon MacMahon himself, whose majestic beard had taken root and in the course of ages grown into the stone slab. He was the first to perceive Robin. Instantly starting up, he drew his long beard from out the huge piers of rock in such haste and with so sudden a jerk that the rock had shattered into 1,000 pieces. "What seek you?" he demanded in a voice of thunder. "I come," answered Robin, with as much boldness as he could put on, for his heart was almost fainting within him. "I come to claim Philip Ronayne, whose time of service is over this night." "And who sent you here?" said the giant. "It was my own accord I came. Of my own accord I came," said Robin. "Then you must single him out from among my pages," said the giant. "And if you fix the wrong one, your life is the forfeit. Follow me." He had led Robin into a hall of vast extent, and filled with lights, along either side of which were rows of beautiful children, all apparently 7 years old, and all dressed exactly alike in green. "Here," said Mahon, "you are free to take Philip Ronayne if you will, but remember, I give thee but one choice." Robin was sadly perplexed, for there were hundreds upon hundreds of children, and it had been years since he had laid eyes on young Philip. But he walked along the hall as if nothing was the matter, side by side with Mahon, whose great iron dress clanged fearfully at every step, sounding louder than Robin's own sledge when he battered it on his anvil. They had nearly reached the end of the hall without speaking, when Robin, seeing that the only means he had was to make friends with the giant, determined to try what effect a few soft words might have. "'Tis a fine, wholesome appearance the poor children carry," remarked Robin, "although they have been here so long, shut out from the fresh air and the blessed light of heaven. This tenderly your honour must have reared them." "Aye," said the giant, "that is true, so give me your hand, for you are, I believe, a very honest fellow for a blacksmith." Then all the young boys began to whisper amongst themselves, and Robin, looking at the huge hand the giant was offering, suspected a trap. Therefore, instead of his own hand, he presented his plug iron, which the giant seized and twisted in his grasp, round and around, again as if it had been a potato stalk. On seeing this, all the children gave a shout of laughter. In the midst of their mirth, Robin thought he heard his name called, and looking around quickly, he put his hand on the shoulder of the boy who he fancied had spoken, and he cried out at the same time, "Let me live or die for it, but this is young Phil Ronayne." "It is Philip Ronayne, happy Philip Ronayne," said his young companions. In an instant the hall became dark. Crashing noises were heard, and all was in strange confusion. But Robin held fast to the boy, and a moment later found himself lying in the green dawn of the morning in the carved entranceway again, with the boy clasped in his arm. They scrambled together into the waiting skiff, which Tom began to row away in a hurry, and when Robin looked back over his shoulder at the giant stairs, there was no doorway to be seen. The story spread soon enough that young Master Phil was returned to his family, and Robin Kelly was he who had rescued him. "Are you quite sure, Robin, it is young Phil Ronayne you have brought back with you?" was the regular question, for although the boy had been 7 years away, his appearance was now just the same as on the day he went missing. He had grown neither taller nor older in look, and he spoke of things which had happened before he was carried off, as if they had occurred yesterday. "Am I sure? Well, that's a queer question," was Robin's reply, seeing the boy as the blue eye of the mother, with the foxy hair of the father, to say nothing of the wart on the right side of his little nose. I recognized him right away myself. However Robin Kelly may have been questioned, the worthy couple doubted not that they had delivered their child from the power of the giant MacMahon, and the reward they bestowed on him equaled their gratitude. Philip Ronayne lived to be an old man, and he was remarkable to the day of his death for his skill in working brass and iron. It was believed he had learned his skill during his 7 years' apprenticeship to the giant Mahon MacMahon, and he put it to use working in the smithy side by the side with Robin Kelly for many years. That was it.